السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. قال الله تعالى في الفرقان الحميد: ولا تقربوا الزنا إنه كان فاحشة وساء سبيلا. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما. My noble brothers, sisters and elders, for the last few weeks we have been speaking about different body parts and the Islamic ruling pertaining to these body parts. We spoke about the tongue for the last few months, and today we're going to start speaking about the eye. Before we speak about the eye, I would like to establish a few principles so it gives us a better understanding of how the eye plays a very important role in our spiritual journey. Islam is a religion that has encouraged a human being to benefit from every moment. It has been made mention regarding scholars of the past that the scholars of the past, they were more possessive of time than their commodity. They were more possessive of their time than their commodities. They could sacrifice their commodity, but they could not sacrifice their time, because they knew the value of time. So every minute that used to pass by, they used to fill it with good. And they believed, and we should believe as well, that whatever we sow is what we will reap in the life to come. فَمَنْ وَجَدَ خَيْرًا فَلْيَحْمَدِ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ وَجَدَ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ فَلَا يَلُومَنَّ إِلَّا نَفْسَهُ. If we find good, we have filled time with good, we can display gratitude. Thank Allah for that. And if we do not find good in our time, then there's no one else to blame but ourselves. Allah gave us the opportunity to fill the time with a'mal salihah. A'mal salihah and a'mal sayyi'ah are created by this body. The body is the machine. We have to consider this body to be a machine. We can produce good and we can produce evil. So this body that is with us until we have life should be utilized to produce a'mal salihah. But the reality is that by a mere slip, this same body can create a'mal sayyi'ah. It can create evil. So we have to be very, very mindful every moment that this body does not slip. May it be the tongue, may it be the ear, may it be the eye, may it be any other part of the body. So Islam has introduced a group of laws, a set of laws that are very, very unique in relation to the topic that I am to disclose. Islam does not only forbid or detest the crime in itself, but all roads, all avenues, all means, all instruments that lead to the crime have been labeled as unlawful. So if we can block all the roads and all the means and all the instruments to the crime, it will be hard to make it to the crime. As we see many a times when there's a riot and people want to riot outside the governor's house, many miles before, they block all the roads to the governor's house, so the people cannot make it there. They'll be very far back voicing their opinion, but it will not be heard by the person. The same principle, that all the roads that lead to the crime have been blocked. And people, if they establish that part in their life, it will be very easy to avoid the crime itself. Allah Rabbul Izzah says in the glorious Quran, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشًا, that do not go close to zina. It is an act of lewdness, shamelessness. Keep away from it. This path of zina is a bad path. So Allah refers to zina as sa'a sabila, a bad path. Before a person can commit zina, fornication, there is a road that will lead a person to fornication. It doesn't happen instantly. There are many small steps that a person takes to make it to the gate of zina. And Islam has placed a barricade on those avenues that lead to zina. That's why the Prophet of Allah, the hadith is in Tirmidhi, he has said that if a lady sprays perfume and then she walks outside and then she attracts the attention of the opposite gender, she is this, referring to zina, that she has committed adultery. She has attracted the mind, she has ignited the carnal desires in a human being. She has polluted the mind, she has given an opportunity to the opposite gender to think bad of her. So the Prophet of Allah labeled this as zina. The Muslim fuqaha have made mention that if a lady is wearing jewelry that makes a sound, and she walks outside and her intention is to attract, she is committing zina as well. Vice versa, if a man is adorning himself and the reason behind it is to attract the opposite gender, this is zina as well. To ignite the sense of lust and desire in a human being, because this is the means to zina of the mind, and it can lead to the door of the practical zina. All this will be labeled as zina, fornication. How mindful the scholars are that if the Imam is leading the prayer and in congregation there are women, and the Imam makes a mistake in recitation, and a lady comes to know about the mistake, she is not allowed to correct the Imam verbally. She will have to tap on her hand to indicate to the Imam that you have made a mistake. Why is this ruling? Because if she speaks out loudly, this may create a bad thought in the mind of the congregation. For that reason, women are not allowed to give adhan. For that reason, the women are not allowed to give adhan. What a noble amal, what a noble ibadat to give the adhan. It has been said that the mu'adhinun on the day of judgment will be honored, that they could be seen from far away because of the lengthy neck. Ladies are not allowed to give adhan. Reason behind it is, if they give adhan, it may ignite the lust within. Allah says in Surah Ahzab, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ, cling onto your houses. Garo ke andar raho. Instruction to the women, remain in the house. leave the responsibility of collecting the sustenance on the shoulder of the husband. Live in the house. Do not leave the house. And if you are to leave the house, enshroud yourself. Cover yourself properly. Wear a uniform that displays modesty, that will not allow others to look at you in a bad manner. So Islam is a religion that has spoken about crime, but has displayed emphasis on all the roads that lead to the crime. We all know that the consumption of alcohol is haram. But what does the Prophet of Allah say? The drinking of alcohol haram, unlawful. The serving of alcohol haram, unlawful. The transportation of alcohol haram, unlawful. And if a person is plucking the grapes with the intention that these grapes will be used for the making of alcohol, the plucking is haram. If a person places a glass on the table with the intention that this is a glass that will be used to serve alcohol, this act is haram as well. Anything associated with alcohol, the drinking, the buying, the selling, the transporting, all haram. It is placing a barricade on the roads that lead to the crime. So from today onwards, for many Jummahs to come, we are going to speak about the eye. That is one of the most powerful instruments of the Satan. And when the eye is used incorrectly, the environment becomes an environment of zina, an environment of shamelessness. The Prophet of Allah, in his early days, he formed a community in Madinatul Munawwarah. When he had a grasp upon the people of Medina and the neighboring cities, he extended his mission and sent letters to kings of other countries. Khutut bheja. One of the letters that he sent was to Hercules, the Caesar of Rome. Now, Hercules was very, very educated in relation to the previous divine books. He was one of the great scholars of that time. And before he could make a judgment upon the letter that was sent to him, because he was in Baytul Maqdis at that time, and the message and the letter was conveyed to him through the governor of Basra. So before he could make a judgment on that letter, he made some inquiries regarding the person that sent the letter to him. Inquiries about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I want you to listen to this very, very carefully. He said, is there any person from the town of this person? And they said, there normally is a group of people from his town, from his city, because they trade in our country. So the people of Mecca, many a times they used to trade in Sham, and many a times they used to trade in Yemen, based upon the weather, winter and summer. What happened, that when they made an inquiry, they came to know that Abu Sufyan, who was the leader of the mushrikun at that time, he was traveling through Sham on a business trip. And Abu Sufyan was the leader after the murder or after the killing of Abu Jahl. So Abu Jahl was killed in the battle of Badr, and after that Abu Sufyan took the leadership. So Abu Sufyan, who at that time was not a Muslim, was summoned by Hercules. And he said, do not lie to me. Tell me the truth regarding the message of this person. What does he say? He asked a few other questions regarding the background of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the family tree. But what I want to highlight is befitting the topic that I have disclosed in front of you. And Abu Sufyan said that he speaks about not ascribing partners with Allah. Is there anything else? He emphasizes 4 things. Wherever he sits, he speaks about what I'm going to tell you. Number 1, establish your prayer. Wherever he goes, he says, establish your prayer. Prayer is the fuel. Without fuel, the car cannot move, the conveyance cannot move. The spiritual conveyance cannot move. You need the fuel in the conveyance. Maintain honesty in all matters. May it be honesty with yourself. May it be honesty with your family members. May it be honesty with your friends, your relatives. May it be honesty in your business. But maintain honesty wherever you are. If a person is not honest with himself, he cannot sleep well at night. There will be something that will be bugging him. He can please all, but he can't please himself if he's not honest. रात को उसको चैन की नींद नहीं आएगी. The best pillow is the pillow of honesty. If you are honest, that's the best cozy pillow. Put your head on and fall asleep. That's why when we study the stories of the saintly people, we come to know that they put a brick under their head and they go to sleep. Put a brick under their head and fall asleep. I made mention before, I read a book in the Maktab, Band Nama in Farsi, Band Nama. And the author of this book, his name was Fariduddin Attar. He used to sell perfume, fragrance. Fariduddin Attar, he used to sell fragrance. He was far, far away from the religion. Muslim, far, far away. And he was selling his perfume in his shop, and one saintly person passing through, he started to give him advice. And the discussion finished bitter. Fariduddin Attar said, who do you think you are giving me advice? I have everything. What do you have? He said, I have the preparation of death, and I am ready to meet my Allah. Have you made the preparation? Are you ready to meet Allah? He said that I can't see any difference between me and you. What preparation have you made? And he takes a brick and he puts it on the ground. He places his head on the ground and he says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and dies. This incident was the turning point in the life of Fariduddin Attar. And he became one of the saintly people of Islam. That a person without any uneasiness in the mind can fall asleep. So maintain honesty in all matters. The third advice that the Prophet of Allah gives, because zina was rampant, and zina was rampant and in abundance in the Arab Peninsula and in the entire world, because there was no Iman. Because Iman brings modesty. Nothing else can bring modesty. If there is no Iman, no modesty. The criteria of modesty will change. It will be played around with. It will be distorted if there is no Iman. Because it's human nature to find ease in the life that he wants to live. He will justify it. Iman is the criterion. It is the system. It is the law that educates us and informs us of the high level of modesty. So there was no Iman in the world. So there was no modesty. And when there's no modesty, there's zina. So the third advice of the Prophet of Allah was that preserve your chastity. Apni izzat ka khayal karo. Preserve your chastity. And safeguard yourself from all acts of shamelessness and lewdness. And you have to, I really want you to go back and think about the environment in which the Prophet was, and he's given this instruction over and over again. He's given this instruction over and over again. And the third is maintain family ties. Because if we cannot be strong in our family, how can we expect that our community will grow? First of all, we have to show strength in our family. Once we can show strength and display our good conduct with our family, it will be easier for us to display it on the second level. Think about it. Imam Malik rahimahullah mentions in his Muta that one youngster, and the youngster poses this question, and this in itself indicates the level of modesty in those days. That a youngster comes to the Prophet of Allah and the Sahaba are sitting there, and he says, "Oh Prophet of Allah, give me ijazah, permission to commit zina." So the hurmat of zina was taken away by the abundance of zina. The hurmat of zina was taken away by the abundance of zina. People didn't even consider it to be haram. Like nowadays, the taking of a loan from the bank is in abundance, so the hurmat of riba has been taken away. Same pattern. Everyone does it, known as umum balwa. So people say it is okay. And the few people that speak against it, people consider them to be foolish, madman. He's not with the time. He doesn't understand. He's losing. He's missing out on opportunities. So the abundance of zina took away the hurmat of zina from the minds of the people. So this youngster, he says, "Allow me to commit zina." Ajib. The benevolence of the Prophet of Allah, the mercy of the Prophet of Allah, the wisdom of the Prophet of Allah is such that can be understood from this incident, that the Prophet of Allah did not shout at him, did not rebuke him, did not admonish him, did not tell him off, but he placed his blessed hand over his shoulders to express the feeling that he had for this sick person. He's a sick person. And he said, "Before I can give you a judgment upon what you have asked, I would like to pose a few questions." And then the Prophet of Allah said that the lady with whom you intend to commit this despicable crime, she must be the mother or the daughter or the auntie of some person. Now I ask you, would you like somebody to commit this act with your mother? Would you like somebody to commit this crime or this act with your sister? With your auntie? Paternal, maternal? And he said, "No." So he said, "If you do not like somebody that he commit this act with your mother, sister, auntie, why would you commit a crime with such a lady, when that lady will be the auntie or the mother or the sister of somebody?" And this opened his eyes, and he started to think about it. He said, "Oh Prophet of Allah, I will not go close to this crime, to this act." The Prophet of Allah placed his blessed hand on his chest and said, "Oh Allah, whatever dirt remains in his heart, through your rahmat, remove that dirt. Remove that dirt. Ye dirt hai, gandagi hai, that comes from the eye that we are going to speak about. This is dirt." The Prophet of Allah refers to it as dirt. So the Prophet of Allah places his hand on the chest and says, "Remove this dirt that made him pose this question." The Sahaba, they observed the life of this young Sahabi for many, many years to come. And they said, "We found that this person was so consistent in protecting his gaze. He never used to astray from the right path. Wherever there was temptation, he used to lower his gaze. So the advice that the Prophet of Allah was giving in the early days, that came to the notice of Hercules, was preserve your chastity. And this rule is not only to the women, it is for the men as well. It is for the men as well. It is for both genders, as we will speak about in the weeks to come. And safeguard yourself from all acts that may lead you to acts of shamelessness and lewdness. And I will conclude on that for today. And I want you to go back home and think about, where is my body used? What do I place in time? What do I fill my time with? मैं क्या देख रहा हूँ? मैं क्या सोच रहा हूँ? What am I looking at from the time I wake up till I sleep? How many things are haram and how many things are halal? The things that I am looking at, what are they creating? What images are they leaving in my mind? What am I dreaming of in my private time? Because what we capture with our eyes is left in the back of the mind, and that comes to the front in our private time, in our time of solace, our time of privacy, and then we think about it. I'll leave it at that for today. I want you really to think about it. The advice goes to myself first of all, and then to all my brothers and all my sisters. Allah give us tawfiq to uphold the high standards of modesty that have been prescribed by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. قال الله تعالى في الفرقان الحميد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما. My noble brothers, sisters and elders, for the last few weeks we have been speaking about different body parts and how to adorn these body parts with good deeds. And to do that we have to establish what is right and what is wrong, what is beneficial and what is harmful to these body parts. Last week we started speaking about the eye. That the eye is a very important bounty, ni'mat that Allah Rabbul Izzat has granted us. And the proper usage of this eye can elevate us in the eyes of Allah. And the proper usage of this eye can allow us to accumulate many, many good deeds. The incorrect usage of this eye can destroy our iman, and it can finish our good deeds. And I made mention that the mizaj of Islam, the temperament of Islam, is such that it does not only concentrate upon the evil, but it speaks about all roads that lead to evil. Ye Islam ka mizaj hai, that it does not only concentrate upon the evil alone, but it speaks about all the different routes and roads that lead to that evil. And then Islam places a sign, no entry, that a person is not allowed to go on these roads. And I gave the Quranic verse as a proof, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, that do not go close to zina. That anything that can lead to zina is made unlawful. So if a person can keep away from the roads that lead to the act of zina, it will be impossible to commit zina. Shifting a little from the eye, I would like to enhance the topic by mentioning a side topic that I believe is very, very crucial to the topic that we have started, and that is how can we use this body properly. If the car, the conveyance does not have fuel, it will not move. It may be the most expensive car, but if it does not have $50 worth of fuel, the car may be $500,000, but it doesn't have $50 worth of fuel, it will not move. That is the known fact. We can collect information as much as we want, and nowadays information can be collected in abundance, but the implementation of that information will be hard if a person doesn't have the fuel. The Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, they used to say, ta'allamna al-iman thumma ta'allamna al-Qur'an. The practice of the Sahaba was that they first build their iman, their faith, the ta'alluq with Allah, the connection with Allah. They concentrated upon that they pondered over the sifat of Allah, the attributive names of Allah. They've developed this ma'rifat, recognition of Allah. And once they understood who Allah was, then they learned the Qur'an. Now whatever the Qur'an spoke about, they knew it was the Qur'an, the kalam of my Allah. And they had touched base with their Allah through recognition. Now the implementation of the order, even if it required extreme effort, even if the implementation of the order required a complete U-turn in life, they did not hesitate, because they had developed that ta'alluq with Allah. We, alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, we are Muslims, and we understand by the complete religion that has been given to us what is lawful, what is unlawful, what is right for the eye, what is wrong for the eye, and for the different body parts. But many a times we find that it becomes hard to implement that. The knowledge is there, but it becomes hard to implement that. The car is outside, the tank of fuel is full. It's just hard to get out of the couch and to sit in the car and to drive home. It's just hard. Just don't want to leave my comfort zone. It's just hard. Can't get up. Feeling lazy, weak. Just doesn't want to stand up. That person does not want to stand up. Likewise, everything is there. The understanding of what is lawful, what is unlawful, what is halal, what is haram is known. But it's just hard to put it to practice. So we need that push. We need that push. I believe every Muslim of some level of iman, and a Muslim has some level of iman, has that feeling. But it's just that push, they need that push. Based upon the strength of iman, the push will be strong. If the iman is strong, in proportion to the strength of iman, the push will be strong. So we have to try to develop our faith. And today I'm going to speak about one or two aspects. It is a topic that requires many sittings. And I believe last year we dedicated about 27 Jumu'ahs on Iman. You remember last year. But this topic in itself requires lengthy sittings. And still a person like myself of very limited knowledge cannot cover a drop of the ocean of Iman. But if we do not concentrate upon how to build our Iman, there is a possibility that we will be accountable for the knowledge that we have that we did not practice. For the knowledge that we have that we did not practice. I'm going to mention one statement of our Prophet. Samundra ko kooze mein band kar diya. Beautiful statement of our Prophet of Allah. And the more you go home and think about it, the more you think about this statement of the Prophet of Allah, the more things will come into your mind. It is like, it is an ocean contained in a vessel. And the more you put your hand into it, the more you can take out. مثل المؤمن مثل النحلة. مثل المؤمن مثل النحلة. تأكل طيبا وتضع طيبا. A believer is like a honeybee. A believer is like a honeybee. شاهد की मक्खी वो. تأكل طيبا وتضع طيبا. It eats pure and it produces pure. सोचो, think, tafakkaru, think. It eats pure and it produces pure. One is a honeybee and one is a fly. The fly sits on impurity and is irritated and is not liked by us. Deet hoti wo. Fly sits on impurity. The inclination of the bee does not allow it to sit on impurity. The inclination, the mizaj of the bee does not allow the bee to sit on impurity. It will not go close to impurity. It will suck the nectar from the flowers to produce honey. If you go to the village of the bees, you find it is clean, the environment is clean. And what it produces has been made mention in the Quran as asal. Its inclination does not allow it. On the other hand, the fly, its inclination is towards impurity. There can be a clean environment, it will leave the clean environment and will come to the impure environment. It will leave the clean environment, it will come to the impure environment. And it will sit there all day. Likewise, one dimension of this statement of our Prophet of Allah, and it is very, very befitting in the society in which we live. There is a pure environment and there is an impure environment. And both environments are freely available. Good and bad is outside. It's your mizaj, it's my mizaj, it's our inclination that will determine where we go and sit. Don't blame the environment. The fly cannot blame the dirty environment that I have spent my time in a dirty environment. This is the blame on the environment. No. The clean environment was available as well. Why didn't you go there? Chale jate wo? We cannot blame the environment, even if the environment is non-conducive to the faith that we have taken on. We cannot blame it, because there is a pure environment that is available as well. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Jo chahe mu'min ban jaye, jo chahe kafir ban jaye. If you want to, you can become a believer. If you want to, you can become a non-believer. That's up to you. Both paths, both roads are in front of us. Inclination, the inside. If we do not come to the masajid, and if we do not come to the majalis of dhikr, the majalis of Allah, and then we find that our iman does not allow us to leave the couch, to sit in the conveyance of a'mal salihah, there is no one to blame but yourself. I made mention the hadith in Muslim, the lengthy hadith, the last part of the hadith. فَمَنْ وَجَدَ خَيْرًا فَلْيَحْمَدِ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ وَجَدَ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ فَلَا يَلُومَنَّ إِلَّا نَفْسَهُ. If you find good, thank Allah. And if you do not find good in your life, in your actions, in your book of deeds, there is no one to blame but yourself. No one to blame but yourself. To accept deen, to accept Islam in the initial stages of this beautiful religion was similar to committing suicide. The Sahaba demonstrated that wherever you are, you can uphold the laws of Allah. In Makkah, where they were surrounded by non-believers, and not non-believers that were minding their own business, but non-believers that were interested in the movement of the believers. And just visualize us, we are more than 200-300 people here, 30-40 people. First and second line, that's it, 30-40 people. And the entire Brisbane hates us. Hates us. How hard it will be to live in such an environment for 13 long years. Can we sort it? 1-2 lines. And sometimes, we draw support from people that we love, that we can trust. All those that you love and all those that you trust have shown their back. There's no one there to support you. Your own brothers, your own sisters, your own uncles, your own aunties have deserted you. In such an environment, the Sahaba, they upheld the laws of Allah. So we got no excuse. They did not have an environment, a pure environment. They did not have a pure environment. For that reason, hijrah took place. For that reason, to give them an alternative environment in which they could practice, Allah said, make hijrah. If we do not have a pure environment, we make hijrah. But we do. The masajid are open. The venues of good are open at all times. But at the same time, the venues of evil are open at all times. It is our inclination that will determine where we go. The Prophet of Allah says, what the honey bean takes in is what it produces. Jo khati hai, wahi banati hai. If we look at haram, in a majlis of khayr, we will not look at haram. What haram can we see in this masjid? But if we place ourselves in an impure environment, or on the sides of an impure environment, on the outskirts of that environment, we are going to take things inside through the village of ilm. I mentioned this before. Through the village of ilm. We're going to take it inside. And what goes inside comes out in the form of actions. We look at haram, nudity, we will produce actions in proportion to that. We listen to haram, we will produce haram. ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता कि आदमी हराम खाए तो हलाल पैदा करे. ये तो हो नहीं सकता. Impossible. So we have to try to find majalis of khair where we can place ourselves. So we have the power to restrain and to control our desires and make them befitting the laws of Allah. Now this iman, this faith, sometimes it's very strong and sometimes it drops. And it drops and it becomes strong based upon where we place this body. What we see, what we hear, what we read, what we eat. And the Prophet of Allah was mindful of that. So what did the Prophet of Allah say? Innal iman la yakhluqu fi jawfi ahadikum kama yakhluqu thawbul khaliq fas'alullaha an yujaddida al-iman fi qulubikum aw kama qala alayhi salatu wassalam. Subhanallah. This iman, this faith that allows us to suppress our negative emotions. This iman is like a cloth. And when a person wears clothes, the clothes become worn out. Today it is very, very clean, and after a few days I have to put it into the wash. Iman is similar. Iman is similar. It is like a uniform of our soul. And when we place ourselves, because we have to live in this dunya, so we go out, and sometimes deliberately, sometimes without any option, things that are unlawful are taken in. बाज़ दफ़ा आदमी हराम की नीयत से नहीं जाता, लेकिन हराम अंदर चला जाता है. We don't go with the intention to commit haram, but we find ourselves in an environment of haram. We keep away, but we can feel the heat of the flame of sin. If a person does not touch the fire or jump into the fire and he stands far away, still he can feel the heat of the fire. And when he comes back, even if he does not smoke, his wife will say, I can smell cigarettes from your clothes. I can smell it. He didn't smoke, but he was amongst the people, or maybe on the other table. Maybe on the other table. He didn't commit haram, but this will have an impact upon the soul, upon that uniform. So the clothes become worn out. The iman, the uniform of the soul, becomes worn out and tattered. So we have to put it in the wash. So it comes out clean and strong. فَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ أَن يُجَدِّدَ الْإِيمَانَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Allah se sawal karo. Ask Allah in abundance to renew your iman. Fi qulubikum, in your hearts. Renew your iman. Jaddidu imanakum. Jaddidu imanakum. Qila ya Rasulullah, wa kayfa nujaddidu imanana? The Prophet of Allah says, renew your iman. So the Sahaba say, oh Prophet of Allah, how can we renew our iman? أكثروا من قول لا إله إلا الله. Say La ilaha illallah in abundance. And think about La ilaha illallah. What does La ilaha illallah mean? What are the requirements of La ilaha illallah? What are the haquq of La ilaha illallah? What does this simple sentence mean to me? Why didn't Abu Talib, Abu Jahl, Utbah, Shayba, why didn't these people just say La ilaha illallah? What was the impact of accepting this? What did these people have to give up that they were afraid of, that did not allow them to take that next step? Sochi admi. In the madrasa we teach the child, first creed of kalima, the first creed of faith, Pala kalima, La ilaha illallah, and the child, he places this to memory. Without even thinking, he could say La ilaha illallah. But what does this mean? Why was this bitter for the people in Mecca? Why was this so bitter? Why couldn't they accept it? That's why the Prophet of Allah, he makes mention of different levels of this iman. One day a person came to the Prophet of Allah and he said, Ayyul iman afdal? Ayyul iman afdal? Which iman is the best? Which iman is the best? The Prophet of Allah said, Al-Hijrah. Hijrah. Now generally Hijrah means migration. We read in the Seerah, Hijrah of the Prophet of Allah from Mecca to Medina. So the Sahaba said that we asked which iman is the best, and the Prophet of Allah says Hijrah. That generally means migration. So the Sahaba said, Famal Hijrah? Kaun si hijrat hai? What do you mean by hijrat? And what did the Prophet of Allah say? Tahjuru su, to forsake evil. My commentary to this, hijrah from the towns, the villages of evil to the towns and villages of a'mal salihah. That's what the Prophet meant. To migrate from the avenues, from the majalis, from the environment of evil that will eventually make you commit haram, to the avenues, to the towns and the environments of a'mal salihah. This is hijrah. This is the best iman. Iman is not collecting information. Iman is practicing the information. And practicing the information is not a possibility without the strength of Iman. Without the strength of Iman. And this Iman becomes worn out and tattered. Haris bin Malik Ansari, he says, Marartu Nabiya sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. One day I passed the Prophet of Allah. Nowadays, if we meet somebody, we say, Assalamu alaikum. And indeed that is noble. Some people that are modern, they say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Muslims say Assalamu alaikum. So the Prophet of Allah, he said, Kayfa asbahta? Kayfa asbahta? How is your morning? Now the Prophet of Allah, the way he asked, and this was something that was common amongst the Sahaba as well. The Sahaba knew from which angle the Prophet is asking. Kayfa asbahta? Tumhari subah kaise thi? How is your morning? And Hazrat Haris bin Malik Ansari says, Asbahtu mu'minan haqqa. I found myself in the morning with solid, complete Iman. In the morning when I woke up, I had complete Iman. So the Prophet of Allah says, Anzur ilayk. Check what you are saying. Inna li kulli shay'in haqiqa, fama haqiqatu imanika. Check what you're saying, because for every claim there is a proof. When you make a claim, you have to prove it. If I say I'm an alim, I have to prove it. If you say you're a doctor, you have to prove it. If you're an engineer, you have to prove it. You're a sports person, prove it. This house belongs to me, prove it. Where are the deeds? Inna li kulli shay'in haqiqa. For everything there is a proof. Fama haqiqatu imanika. What is the proof of your iman? Now listen to what Hazrat Haris bin Malik Ansari says. Allah give us that. Allah allow us to acquire what he presented as his proof. He says that I have separated myself from the attraction of this world. Meaning that this world and whatever it contains, the glitter, the glow, the beauty, it will not derail me from my objective of life. In pursuing this, I will never ever forsake the command of Allah. So I have separated myself from being infatuated with this world. Infatuation makes a person commit haram. It can't happen with me. I spend my day in fasting. This is his proof of iman. I spend my day in fasting, and I spend my night in the ibadat of Allah. And I find myself at a station that when I look up, I see the arsh of Allah. It's like I'm seeing the arsh of Allah, the throne of Allah. And I made mention before, the largest makhluk of Allah is the arsh of Allah. The largest makhluk. I find myself at a station where I can see, or I feel that I can see the arsh of Allah. I look up and I see the people of Jannah enjoying the bounties of Jannah. And I look up and I can see the people of Jahannam screaming, wailing in Jahannam. This is the iman. So if the curtains that separate the ghaib, the unseen from us, are removed, and the ghaib becomes the seen, it will not improve his iman, because he is seeing it right now through the strength of his iman. And the Prophet of Allah says, Arafta, tumne iman ko pehchan liya. You have got iman, but falzam qalaha thalatha. Hold on to it. Hold on to it. And the Prophet of Allah said, hold on to it 3 times, because something that is precious can be taken away. We may have iman today, but if we don't place ourselves in the right environments, in the good environments, this iman can be taken away. Place yourself in an environment where you can sustain that iman. The Prophet of Allah said this 3 times. And that's why the very famous dua of the Prophet of Allah, Ya muqallibul qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. ثبت قلبي على دينك ثبت قلبي على طاعتك. Oh Allah, keep my heart firm on the establishment of your deen, on your obedience, because this heart, it shifts. The iman becomes worn out, and at that moment we may be vulnerable and we may drift away from our center. Now in such a country where Allah has sent us to promote, propagate, to display, to present this beautiful religion, we need the washing machines. We need those washing machines where we can place our worn out iman, pull it out, and once again we're strong again. We want to be the honeybee. We want to sit in majalis where we come out and we feel strong spiritually. And that strength remains with us for a substantial time, where we can forsake evil and attain the highest level of iman, that is known as hijrah. So next weekend, our ijtama, not my ijtama, not brother's ijtama, our ijtama is to take place. Friday, Saturday, Sunday is our ijtama. This is an environment of khair, where we will speak about Allah, the greatness of Allah, how to acquire the greatness of Allah. Ajillullah yaghfir lakum. Revere Allah, Allah will forgive you. That's what Allah wants. Revere Allah. Allah ko pehchan lo, Allah maaf kar dega. Ajillullah yaghfir lakum. We become the honeybee. Now there will be many flies in those days. They will not go to that majlis. They may have a cup of tea or a latte in the city. Caramel latte in the city. MashaAllah. That may happen as well. They may not go with that intention that they're going to do anything haram, but there's fire everywhere. They will come back with the smell of the smoke of that fire. And why does a person want to place himself in such a place? The very famous incident, one person, the last person that comes out of Jannah, he's on the border of Jannah. So he comes out of the nar. He's out of fire now. And he says, oh Allah, I can feel the heat of Jannah. Take me a bit further away. Then they put him in Araf. Now he stands at Araf. He looks at one side towards his left and he sees Jahannam. He looks towards his right and he sees Jannah. He said, Allah, take me towards Jannah, the door of Jannah. And eventually he makes it into Jannah. Why do we go for a latte in the city, or a coffee or a tea in the city at a time when evil is at its peak? Why do we want to test ourselves? Why do I want to test my eye? Why do I want to test my iman? If I fall short and I don't come out with flying colors, who is there to blame? So when there's an environment of iman, an environment in which we are going to speak about Allah and the Rasul, why don't we avail from this environment and place our worn out uniform of iman in the washing machine of this ijtima'? So it's my humble request to all my brothers, noble brothers, beautiful brothers. You are beautiful, that's why you have iman. That's why Allah gave you Islam. Allah chose each one of you for His deen. How many people outside much better looking than us, much stronger than us, but there was something that they did not have, that Allah did not give them iman. There's something that is in you. You may know about it, you may not know about it, but Allah gave you Islam. Let's appreciate it, let's value it. Falzam, let's hold on to it. Anything that weakens our iman, we will step away from that. Benefit from this ijtama. It's our ijtama. Mera, tumhara, hum sabka. It's ours. We make it successful. We go in there. Don't listen to the stories. He said this and he said that. Go yourself and experience it. Go in there, come out, and you will feel strong. I give you my word. Allah Rabbul Izzah give each one of us tawfiq to sustain our iman, to strengthen our iman. And Allah Rabbul Izzah make us a honeybee in relation to our iman, where we go to places that strengthen our iman. Are we ready to do that? Allah Rabbul Izzah give us tawfiq. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem, amma ba'd. Qala Allah ta'ala fil furqanil hamid, wa la taqrabu az-zina innahu kana fahisha wa sa'a sabila. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما. My noble brothers, sisters and elders, after a break we reconnect with the topic that we started. I made mention of a hadith reported by Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal in Musnad Ahmad, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala an, that the Prophet of Allah ordered the Sahaba to attain modesty. Istahyu min Allahi azza wa jal haqq al-haya. When the Prophet of Allah ordered the Sahaba to maintain modesty or to attain modesty, the Sahaba said, Inna nastahyi min Allah walhamdulillah, that we have attained modesty and we glorify Allah upon it. The Prophet of Allah said, what I am referring to, you have not captured. I am talking about another dimension of modesty. And then the Prophet of Allah said, فَلْيَحْفَظِ الرَّأْسِ وَمَا حَوَى وَلْيَحْفَظِ الْبَطَنِ وَمَا وَعَى وَلْيَذْكُرِ الْمَوْتِ وَالْبِلَى. That the modesty that I am referring to is such a powerful quality that when a person attains it, this body, may it be the head, may it be any other part of the body, it will produce good deeds. Allah Rabbul Izzah has given you and me a machine. This is a machine. Ye karkhana hai, it's a machine. It can produce a'mal salihah and it can produce a'mal sayyi'ah. It is up to us how we utilize this machine. But if a person can attain modesty, the modesty that the Prophet of Allah is referring to in this beautiful statement, this body will produce a'mal salihah. And we spoke about certain body parts before I left, and we were focusing upon the eye. And I made mention that this eye is a beautiful gift. Sometimes we do not appreciate the gift of the eye because we have never been placed in an environment where we are not allowed to see. But if we had to close our eyes for a few moments and live in that state, it will be easier for us to appreciate the bounty of the eye. The utilization of the eye in the proper sense, in the proper manner, can entitle us to great reward. It only takes a matter of seconds, and in a few seconds we can be entitled to great reward, as long as we utilize the eye properly. The Prophet of Allah has said that when a husband looks at his wife with love, and the wife looks at the husband with love, now indeed this love, this bondage, this chemistry will develop through the eye. So the husband is looking at the wife is looking at the husband, and the chemistry is very, very positive, Allah Rabbul Izzat will look at them with His gaze of mercy. So the proper usage of the eye entitles us to the gaze of mercy. Another very interesting statement of the Prophet of Allah that will give us a better understanding or a clearer understanding regarding the utilization of the eye and what we can be credited with. The Prophet of Allah says there is a child that is obedient to his parents. He's obedient to his parents. And he sits down and he looks at his parents. His parents may be aware that he is looking, or his parents are not aware. It doesn't matter. As long as he is looking at his parents with compassion, he is obedient, he sits down and he looks at his father or looks at his mother with compassion, Allah will credit this son with Hajj Mabrur, with the accepted Hajj. How many a times people make different kinds of efforts to make it to the house of Allah, and after a long stretch of efforts a person makes it and he returns back with one thing that is bugging him, that is my Hajj accepted or not? He does everything that he can to the best of his ability, but he cannot say with assurance that his Hajj has been accepted. So he comes back overjoyed, but at the same time there is something that is bothering him. Kya mera Hajj qabool hua ya nahi? Is my Hajj accepted or not? And the Prophet of Allah says the utilization of the eye, that if a child that is obedient to his parents looks at his parents with compassion, he will be rewarded with a Hajj Mabrur, accepted Hajj. Now the Sahaba who heard this statement from the Prophet of Allah, they were amazed. They thought about the effort and then they focused upon the reward. That the effort is very, very minimal and the reward is so great. They do not sit together too well. So they had to ask the Prophet of Allah, and they said, وَلَوْ فِي كُلِّ يَوْمٍ مِئَةَ مَرَّةٍ, that if a person looks at his parents 100 times over, will Allah grant that child 100 Hajj Mabrur? And the Prophet of Allah replied with two beautiful words, and said, Allahu akbar wa atyab. Allah is greater than that, and Allah is purer than that, implying that the divine promise will not be violated. The divine promise will not be violated. Allah has made the promise through the Prophet of Allah, and there is no shortage in the khazana, in the treasures of Allah. So a person may look at his parents 100 times over, but the promise of Allah will remain firm. It will not be violated. Allah will grant the reward to that son, to that daughter. So this is the utilization of the eye. And there are many other ahadith that can be reported right now that come to mind, but this is not our objective right now. Our objective is to concentrate upon the disasters of the eye. That what is the harm of using the eye incorrectly? And the verse that I recited at the time of khutbah, my khutbah, was وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Allah says, do not go close to fornication. And the beautiful ideology of Islam indicates that Islam does not only focus upon the crime, but Islam closes all those doors and avenues that lead to the crime. That's why there's one word in Arabic known as iffat. Iffat. Urdu mein hum kehte hain pak damni. Iffat, pak damni. And it means to safeguard yourself from acts of shamelessness, adultery and fornication. I'll say that again. One of the most important missions of the Prophet of Allah was that the ummah should be afif, should safeguard themselves from acts of shamelessness, adultery and fornication. Shamelessness is inclusive to the utilization of the eye incorrectly. If a person uses the eye incorrectly, he will fall into the trap of fornication and adultery. So it is a must that we control the eye that leads to this crime. And inshallah, in the weeks to come, we will try to mention different statements of the Prophet of Allah that indicate the importance of this eye and how to use this eye. There is one principle, and I would like my brothers to take this principle into their heart. Many a times when males approach me for marriage, and they say that we intend to get married and this is the kind of girl that we want. And the picture that they draw in front of me is of Rabia Basriya, a saintly female. But when you look at the life of the person, the life of the person is totally different than the life of the wife that he desires. And there's a very famous statement, Kama tadinu tudan. Kama tadinu tudan. As you deal with others, so shall you be dealt with. As you deal with others, so shall you be dealt with. And the Prophet of Allah, in a very comprehensive and concise statement, makes mention of this. Elaborates upon kama tadinu tudan. Iffu, the same word that I refer to, iffat, to safeguard yourself from shameless acts, fornication and adultery. Iffu, ta'iffu nisa'ukum, wa barru aba'akum, tabarrukum abna'ukum. And this is a beautiful commentary to kama tadinu tudan. Iffu, ta'iffu nisa'ukum. Adopt chastity in your speech, in your gaze, in your mind, in your heart. Shamelessness should not creep into your speech. Shamelessness should not creep into your mind, into your thoughts. Repel all that. Push it out. Iffu ta'iffu nisa'ukum. If a person adopts chastity in different faculties of life, in different areas of life, Allah will grant purity to his wife. हम गंदा देखेंगे, हमारी बीवियां भी गंदा देखेंगी. हम गंदा सोचेंगे, हमारी बीवियां भी गंदा सोचेंगी. If we look incorrectly, our wives will look incorrectly. If we think improper, our wives will do exactly the same. And then the Prophet of Allah says, Barru aba'akum. Be kind to your parents. Tabarrukum abna'ukum. Your children will be kind to you. Very, very simple. So if we want purity and chastity in our home, it starts from ourselves. And I was thinking of an example that I could relate to my noble brothers and sisters. And one thing came in my mind when I was making the study. That when I do something wrong with any part of my body, I should believe that I'm bringing disaster into my own house. If I look, I'm walking down the street and I'm looking at a female with lust and desire, my wife will not escape the same gaze. My daughter will not escape the same gaze. And I'm bringing disaster into my own home. I'm bringing disaster into my own home. मैं किसी को देखूंगा तो कोई मेरी बीवी को भी देखेगा, कोई मेरी बेटी को भी देखेगा. यह कानून है अल्लाह का. And no one can escape that. So when I do wrong, I'm bringing and I'm opening a door of disaster into my own home. And this is the true translation of Kama Tadinu Tudan. And this is what the Prophet of Allah refers to in the comprehensive and concise statement. Pir Zulfikar Naqshbandi, one of the great mentors in the modern time, that has changed the life of millions of people throughout the world. A living saintly person. And inshallah in the near future we intend to invite him to Australia. He mentions in his books, and I have read in many other books as well, that there was a goldsmith. He returned home and found that his wife was sobbing. She was crying profusely. And he had never found his wife in that state. So he said to his wife, "What happened? I left you in a reasonable state, and I returned back to see that you are sobbing." And the wife says that, "You know that child that we nurtured from the village, and we took care of him, and he used to bring our groceries every day. Today he returned home. He returned to our house and he gave me the groceries as usual, but today he held my hand with passion. And I considered him to be my son. So this act made me cry." And I'm thinking about it. Ye mera beta hai. And he held my hand with passion, with lust. So that's why I'm crying. The wife said this and the husband started to cry. He started to cry. So she stopped and she inquired from the husband, "Why are you crying now?" And the husband says that today a lady came with 2 bangles that I sold to her. And she said that, "Can you place these 2 bangles on my wrist, on my hand?" And I held the hands with passion. Kama tadinu tudan. Kama tadinu tudan. So I held the hand of a lady with passion, with lust, with desire. Allah made me go through exactly the same through my wife. There's a scholar, Qadi Abu Ali. He's a scholar of a few centuries ago. And he mentions an incident in his book, Nishwarul Muhadara, that there was a son that was tying the legs of his father with a rope. And once he did that, he dragged the father out of the house. He dragged the father out of the house. So the father is screaming, but he's been dragged. And they come to a certain station, and the father requests the child, he can't order the child, he requests the child to stop right here and not to proceed any further. So the child says, "Why? I want to take you to that certain point. Why do you want to stop here?" He said, 20 years ago, I dragged my father to that point, as you are dragging me today. And I don't want you to drag me to the point where I dragged my father. So most probably after 20 years, that evil will come to haunt this son. كَمَا تَدِينُ تُدَانُ. So if we maintain chastity in our life, inshallah, by the grace of Allah Rabbul Izzat, Allah Rabbul Izzat will grant us a pure life. If we can repel, push out all bad thoughts, and that takes time. You know, when we stand at the shopping center, there's a main door. And we stand at the main door and it automatically opens. It automatically opens. Garden City, opens. When you enter, then most of the shops have no doors. Kmart has no doors, just go in. Coles has no doors, just go in. Target has no doors, just go in. There's one main gate. You go into that and then there are many, many doors at your disposal. This eye is the main door. When we stand on this door and we allow it to open, then there will be many, many doors that will be waiting for us. And it will be hard. How many a times we go into the shopping center through the main doors and come back without visiting any shop? It's very hard. We enter through the main door and then we say, nice, we go into that shop. And many a times we don't go to buy anything, but we come back with a bill of $200-300. And many a times our wives, they will say that we're just going to the shops just to see, window shopping, but then they will show you this, maine shopping ki $300 ki. Because they've been through the main door. Now it's very, very hard. It's very, very hard to control. This eye is the main door. And it's an automatic door. Automatic. If we go close to it, it will open. If you're a few meters away, it won't open. And that's that temptation. That temptation. Dekhna chahiye, nahi dekhna chahiye. You know, there's a battle within. There's a struggle within. Should I look? Should I not look? And if we look, we have come close to that automatic door. Automatic door opens. Now there are many, many stores, many, many avenues waiting for us. And all these avenues are avenues of haram and evil. They will pollute the mind, they will pollute the heart, and they will be translated through speech. Translated through speech. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal makes mention in Musnad Ahmad that one young Sahabi, a newcomer to Islam, he presents a request to the Prophet of Allah. And he says, "O Prophet of Allah, I intend to commit zina." Straightforward. I intend to commit zina. May our life be sacrificed upon the benevolence and the kindness of the Prophet of Allah. The Prophet of Allah considered the person to be a marid, a sick person. He did not flog him straight away or order the beating of this person, because he's a marid, he's a sick person. This was the benevolence, the kindness of the Prophet of Allah. The Prophet of Allah said, "Come close to me." So the Sahabi came close to the Prophet of Allah. And then the Prophet of Allah inquired, that you intend to commit zina with a female? He says, yes. So the Prophet of Allah, he placed his blessed hands on his back. And this was a gesture of compassion on the back. And then said to him that the lady that you intend to commit zina with, cutting the story short, will be a wife to somebody, a mother to somebody, a paternal auntie to somebody, a maternal auntie to somebody. And he agreed. He said, yes. So he said that, would you like the same sin an act to be committed to your mother, to your daughter, to your paternal auntie, maternal auntie? And he said, no. And this struck to his heart. This hit his heart. And he said that from today onwards, I will not go close to this act of shamelessness. Now, the next part of this hadith is very interesting. The Prophet of Allah placed his blessed hand on his heart and rubbed it. And this is what I want my brothers to understand. Rubbed it. And made dua that whatever filth lies in the heart, oh Allah, remove it. The Sahaba said, we observed the life of this youngster for many, many years to come. The gaze of this youngster never strayed from the right path. Looking incorrectly is filth. Ye gand hai, gand. It is dirty. It is dirt. The thought coming to the mind may not be dirty. That is natural. But responding to that thought and going close to the automatic door is filth. It is dirty. And as long as dirt remains around the main body part, the heart, Nur cannot descend. Hidayah cannot descend. Good cannot descend. If we want Nur to surround the heart, if we want the heart to be qalb salim, a sound heart, we have to remove the dirt. We will not remove the dirt if we do not consider the dirt to be dirt. So if we are looking and we do not give this gaze any consideration, कोई बात नहीं, आज भी देख लिया, कल भी देख लिया, परसों भी देख लिया, 100 दफा देख लिया. We're looking 100 times a day and we don't give it any consideration. Think about the magnitude of the dirt that surrounds this heart. I am not saying that we can control the eye instantly. Most probably that is not practical. We cannot. Maybe there are some noble souls that will. But most of us cannot. But at least the usage of the eye incorrectly should be considered as filth. And keep the example in mind, the automatic door. So we should make tawbah. Immediately come back to the door of tawbah. Take the syrup of repentance. If we do use this eye incorrectly, there's a high possibility that we will fall into the act of zina. Lower the gaze. Lower the gaze. This is a topic that will take much of our time in the weeks to come, but I believe it is a very, very important topic for the reformation of our soul, of our spirituality, for the elevation of our spirituality. And that's why I say those people that work outside and are in contact with the opposite gender on a regular basis, they have to be very, very mindful. They have to be, if they cannot protect their gaze in the profession that they found themselves in, they should give up that profession. They should not remain in that profession if they cannot protect themselves. Because the death of the soul is much more significant and greater than the death of the body. And the death of the soul revolves around the usage of the body parts incorrectly, and in particular the eye. Many brothers now can sit down, ponder over where they find themselves throughout the day and what they are looking at. And is the sickness so great that they cannot overcome it? If they think that the sickness is so great that they cannot overcome it in the environment in which they find themselves, then they have to give up that profession. That profession is not halal for them. Even if that work is halal, that profession for them is not halal. So everyone should ponder, I should ponder, you should ponder what we look at. Allah Rabbul Izzah give us the tawfiq, the ability, the strength to overcome the lust, the desire. And Allah Rabbul Izzah allow us to keep away from all avenues, all ventures and all doors that lead to haram. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem, amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Qala Allah ta'ala fil furqanil hamid. Inna as-sam'a wal basara wal fu'ad kullu ulaika kana 'anhu mas'ula. Sadaqallahul azim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin nabiyil ummi wa ala alihi wa sallim taslima. My noble brothers, sisters and elders, when the Satan disobeyed Allah and did not bow in front of Adam alayhi salatu wassalam as ordered by Allah Rabbul Izzat, he became doomed. And he was assigned a mission that he assigned himself to, that I will work upon humanity and I will lead them to a abode where I will find myself in. So I will lead people away from Jannah and I will lead them to Jahannam. He assigned himself to this mission. Now when we study the Quran in relation to that time, we find a verse in Surah A'raf in section number 2, in which it has been made very, very clear the angle of attack. How will he attack a human being? ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ. He will attack from 4 different directions. From the right, from the left, from in front, from behind. Most of the scholars of tafsir, they have understood that there are 2 directions and angles that have been left free. And if a person can place himself in those 2 different angles or different stations, he will be protected from the attack of the devil. One is below and one is above. Now if a person looks towards the sky and he starts walking on the street, most probably he will find himself in trouble. He may knock into something and find himself wounded. So the sensible place to look at when a person is walking is to look at the ground. If a person can look at the ground and don't look to the right and to the left and in front and behind unnecessarily, this person will be protected from the 4 angles. So from this verse we can clearly understand how important it is to use the eye properly. If we can lower our gaze wherever we may be and protect it from maharimillah, from those stations that are unlawful, we will be protected from all 4 sides. The general pattern of the Quran in relation to revelation is that Allah will send one verse in which He will address male and female. But in Surah Nur verse 30 and 31, the same law has been sent down in two different verses. In one verse, Allah addresses the men, and in verse 31, Allah addresses the women. And the subject of address is exactly the same. That in itself indicates that the message revealed in verse 30, Surah An-Nur, verse 31, Surah An-Nur, is imperative for the reformation and elevation of a human. In verse 30, Allah Rabbul Izzat addresses the men. So He addresses the men before the women. And He says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that say unto the believers. Allah Rabbul Izzat did not address humanity, did not say insan, but address the believers. The reason behind it is the order to follow cannot be fulfilled by a non-believer. Because this order requires a monumental effort. And the effort has to be beautified with modesty. And modesty comes with true faith. So the address is to the believer, that this can be accomplished by a believer. But the endeavor is very, very great. It will require a struggle. And in the initial period, the struggle will be monumental. كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, that, O believers, lower your gaze. O men, lower your gaze. وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَكُمْ, and protect your private parts. Most of the scholars of tafsir have said that there are two different orders in this verse. One is lowering the gaze, and one is protecting the private part. And Allah Rabbul Izzat mentioned lowering the gaze before protecting the private part. Meaning that if a person does not fulfill the first order, he cannot fulfill the second. So the eye and the control over the eye will enable us to keep away from zina. And that's why it is well known to all of us that the eye is the first step to the ladder of zina. The eye. In verse 31, Allah Rabbul Izzat addresses the women. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ, that, O women, you protect your eyes, lower your gaze. You lower your gaze and protect your private part. This is a means to acquire greater purity and chastity. The scholars have derived from these two verses, and the order of these two verses, that this epidemic will be found greater in the men than the women. And that's why Allah addressed the men before the women. But this sickness, this ailment, this marad will be found in the men more than the women. And the reason behind it is not controlling the eyes is a result of not having pure, complete modesty. Deficiency in modesty will enable a person to use the eyes incorrectly. And a lady has a head start because she has been given extra veils of modesty over a man. A lady has been given extra veils of modesty over a man. And that's why when the fuqaha, the Muslim jurists, have made mention, the sukut of a lady is ijab in the matters of nikah. That when a virgin girl is approached, that, do you accept Mr. So-and-so to be your husband? And she remains silent, This silence is ijab, it is acceptance. It is hard for a modest lady to scream out and say, yes I do. Yes I do, screaming, yes I do, is not a projection of complete modesty. Until today in our cultures, in our countries, we find that it is very hard for the lady at that time to even look up towards her parents and to utter the words that I do. So the scholars have said her sukut, her silence, is a form of acceptance. So from these two verses and the order, we clearly understand there is a problem found amongst the men. And the sickness is such that it is continuous. A person is never satisfied. A person never gives in. A person is alcoholic. He may drink 1 bottle, 2 bottles, 3 bottles, but there is an end to it. Physically, he cannot drink anymore. He drops down and he finds himself in the gutter the next day. Or he finds himself in the bed of a person the next day. But there was a limit to this transgression. But the Nazari, using the eyes incorrectly, has no limitation. A person can look at those things that are unlawful for hours and hours. The impact of many harams remain with the person for a certain time. Once a person fulfills his desire, many a times he does not even want to look at the object that he has been pursuing for many, many days. He has fulfilled his desires, now he doesn't even want to look at it. For example, one person is drinking alcohol. And when he wakes up in the morning, he says, I will never drink again. But he forgets this statement and he drinks that same night. But at that time he says, what am I doing? This life is terrible. I'm spewing in every corner of the house. And I'm abusing my wife. And I'm swearing. And I do not have any control over my body. He dislikes the act. But this eye, using the eye incorrectly, a person does not act in this order. When he looks at something that is haram, there's a vicious fire that starts to build in the system of a human being. And if he only confines himself to looking, he will never be satisfied until he commits his wild dreams. Commits to his wild dreams. This will be a thought that will always remain in his mind. And that's why the ulama of spirituality, the ulama of tasawwuf, suluk, they make mention that there are many sins. And every sin has its impact upon the soul of a human being. And does not allow a human being to elevate himself. Wasal, to meet his creator. But Badr Nazari, the incorrect uses of the eye is a ailment that does not even allow a person to step on the path of wasl. Does not allow a person to even step on the path. And that's why we find Maulana Shaykh Ali Thanwi, one of the great reformers of this century, he makes mention in his writings, and I've read in many other books as well, that there are many, many people that pray 5 times a day. And they perform other ibadat of Islam. And they are punctual in the tilawat of the Quran. But they do not control the eye. And all the nur that they gather through these ibadat are erased by the ailment of the eye. All the nur. There's a nur of the ibadat and there's a nur of the face. How many a times we have heard that when the Sahaba used to travel to foreign countries, their appearance in the town used to astound the people. And they used to say, "Ye kaise bande?" There's a different look to these people. The way they present themselves is very, very different. They are covered by serenity and sukoon and tranquility. Their faces are like a sun, that they glitter and they glow. This noor is not of their beauty. This noor is of their iman. And iman and faith means to keep away from that which Allah has forbidden, which God has forbidden. Many a times people used to come, look at the Prophet of Allah, and used to say that this face cannot be the face of a liar. This face cannot be the face of a liar. The Prophet of Allah says, and I want you to listen to this very carefully. First I'm addressing myself and then all my brothers. لَتَحْفَظُنَّ فُرُوجَكُمْ وَلَتَغُضُّنَّ أَبْصَارَكُمْ أَوْ لَيَكْسِفَنَّ اللَّهَ وُجُوهَكُمْ. Lower your gaze. Protect your private part. If order is not fulfilled, you will lose the glow of your face. You will lose the glow of your face. لَيَكْسِفَنَّ اللَّهِ Salat-e Kasuf. Solar eclipse prayer is known as Salat-e Kasuf, in which the sun loses its glow. In the solar eclipse, the sun loses its glow. The same word has been used in this hadith. La yaksifanna Allah wujuhakum. You will lose the glow of your face. A person may be handsome, but that glow of iman will not be apparent on the face. So if you see a person that he is nur, most probably this person is protecting his eyes and keeping away from that which is haram. This is indication. If a person, I'm not talking about being handsome, I'm talking about there's a glow, there's attraction there, different than beauty. Most probably that person is protecting his eyes, he's trying his best, and he's keeping away from maharimillah, those stations that are haram. Those stations that are haram. I was overseas a few weeks ago, and we were visiting a relative. And sometimes Allah brings thoughts into your mind that you can relate to the topic that you are studying, that you are trying to convey. And there was a mother and there was a child. Mother and a child. And the child was very cute, and all children are very cute. They're small angels. So I had some lollies and toffees in my pocket, and I presented it to him. He only saw me for the first time. So when I gave it to him, he did not take it. He looked towards his mother. He looked towards his mother. He didn't take it from me. So I said to him, take the lolly. And he looked to his mother the second time, and he didn't take it. The third time I said, take the lolly. And I tapped him on the head, and his mother said, le lo. Uncle said, le lo. Take it from uncle. And then he took it. Hesitantly he took it. And straight away a thought came to my mind. Straight away a thought came to my mind, and I sat down. And I said, look, the child has inclination towards sweet. Every child likes chocolate and sweets. Despite the inclination, he wants approval from his mother. The respect that he has for his mother. Despite the inclination, he does not touch the lolly. He does not take the chocolate. He wants approval from the mother. Ya Allah. We have an inclination towards looking at haram. Are we not similar to that child, or shouldn't we be better than that child? That before we look, Allah se to ijazat le lo. Let's take ijazat from Allah. Before we look, we should look at Allah. Ya Allah, ye jaiz hai? Yajuz, la yajuz? Is it jaiz? It is not jaiz? Is it halal? Is it haram? Why can't we look at Allah? Why can't we seek permission from Allah before we look at something? In the time of Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala, and there was this has been made mention in Tafsir Durr Mansur, a very famous tafsir of the Quran. under the verse وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ. That is a verse in Surah Rahman. That in the time of Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala, and there was a youngster. And Hazrat Umar, being a Sahabi, was astounded with the commitment of this youngster to ibadat. This youngster was so committed to ibadat, very, very punctual to his ibadat, and to his salah, and to the tilawat of the Quran, and the emotions that used to be on display when he used to read the Quran, used to perplex Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala. So Hazrat Umar, on and off, he used to inquire about that boy. Where is that boy? What is he doing? Now that boy had one father, very, very old, feeble and weak. So he used to commit to the ibadat, and at times of necessity he used to commit to the service of his father. So every night he used to travel from the mosque to his father's house to serve his father. En route there was a lady that fell in love with this young child because he was very, very dashing, very, very good looking. So every day whilst he used to walk from the mosque to his father's house, she used to invite him for haram. And he used to keep away, try to keep away. Insan is insan. One particular night, she invited him, and he started to walk towards the house. And a person slips at one moment. Many a times that person slips so hard that he can't stand up. And by the aun, by the madad and nusrat of Allah, he may slip and he may stand up straight away. And he doesn't injure himself. So this youngster started to walk towards the house, and he was on the doorstep. And he knew that the lady was inviting him for haram. And immediately the verses that he used to recite during the day in his ibadat started to travel through his mind. And the verse that came to his mind was إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِّنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. That when the shaitan attacks you, O people of fear, تَذَكَّرُوا, ponder, socho kya kar rahe ho? Think about what you are doing, where you are doing it. Allah ka ye, Allah ki zameen hai, the land of Allah, the qadoon of Allah, the qadoon of Allah, the land of Allah, the laws of God, and everything that we enjoy is belonging to Allah. Think about it. Tadhakkaru, ponder, فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ, and analyze where you stand. And he fell down, unconscious. So the father was waiting, because there was a particular time when the son used to arrive and the son has not arrived. So he went out in search of the child, and he found that the child was lying on the street. So with the assistance of a few people, he picked up the child, brought him back home. When he woke up, the father said, "Child, what happened to you?" And he related the entire story, and he read the verse again, and he screamed, fell down, and he died. He screamed, fell down, and he died. Tafsir Durr Mansur. Fell down, died. This was at night. And as we know that when a person dies, we try to bury him quick as possible. And there's a reason behind it. A very well-known reason. That the person is going to be good or bad that has died. And the person, if he is good, what is waiting for him around the corner is much better than this world. So why do you want to keep his body in a place that is not so good? Quickly release him so he can enjoy the bounties of barzakh. And if he's bad, why do you want to keep the burden of a bad person upon your shoulders? Release him quickly. Send him to the next world. That's why we bury a person quick as possible. If he's bad, why do you want to keep the burden of a bad person upon your shoulders? Release him. Chhod do isko, jaldi. So they buried him at night. This was brought to the attention of Hazrat Umar the next day. Hazrat Umar said, "You know that I'm very fond of this youngster. And on and off I inquire about him. Why didn't you invite me last night so I could participate in the janazah?" So Hazrat was informed that, "Look, you are very busy throughout the day. You don't have many hours to rest. So we did not want to disturb you." Hazrat Umar said, "Take me to the grave of this child." The whole story was related to him. So Hazrat Umar went to the grave of this child and he said, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتًا وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتًا. A person that fears Allah, Allah will grant him 2 paradises. So you kept away from haram due to the fear of Allah. Have you been given those 2 paradises? And it has been made mention, the child within the grave spoke out, that was heard by all, Allah has fulfilled His promise with me. Allah has fulfilled His promise with me. I am enjoying 2 paradises. This story has been made mention in Tafsir Durr Mansur. وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّةً. So my noble brothers and sisters, let's try to thank Allah Rabbul Izzat that He gave this beautiful gift to us, the gift of the eye, and let's use it properly. There's one hadith that comes to mind that sometimes takes a person to another world, and a person feels very, very scared at the same time, because we are making mistakes over and over again with this eye. And the Prophet of Allah said, كُلُّ عَيْنٍ بَاقِيَةٍ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Every eye will cry on the Day of Judgment. And this cry will be due to knowing that he has failed. Allah ko razi nahi kiya. He has not pleased his Creator. So this eye will cry. Profusely cry. إِلَّا عَيْنٌ. But there is an exception. The first eye that will not cry is an eye that closes an maharimillah, an eye that does not look at haram, an eye that does not look at haram. So he knows that he's been lured in. He knows he finds himself in an environment where there is an object coming towards him that he should not look at. A lot of people say the first sight is halal. It does not mean that you can look the first time. If I know that something is coming towards me, then my looking has become intentional. This intentional look, even if it is for a split second, is haram. It is unlawful. The gaze that has been made lawful and halal is non-deliberate. I was walking without my knowing, without my intention. An object passed by that I should not look at. That first sight is halal. But if I'm walking in the shopping center and I know that there are females walking left, right, center, and I start looking at them, the first sight, may it be a second, may it be a minute, it is haram. Because it's an intentional look. Every eye will cry on the Day of Judgment except that eye that closes from the maharimillah. It closes. It does not open to the haram. It closes to the haram. وَعَيْنٌ يَحْدَثْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And that eye that remains open in the path of Allah. And the third eye? Third eye? That eye that cries due to the fear of Allah, even if one tear emerges from the eye, and in size that tear is equivalent to the size of a head of a fly. So at night when we stand up, even we think about our Creator, and we think about His Sattari, that He has not revealed us to the community, and what He is favouring us with day in, day out, and one drop, one tear flows from our eye. Now in size it is equivalent to the head of a fly. This eye will not cry on the Day of Judgment. And keep in mind, Allama ibn Qayyim rahimahumullah, he makes mention in his writings that every effort that you make, in proportion and in style of that effort, you will be rewarded. So if a person uses the eye properly and does not look at haram, he may be allowed to see Allah on a daily basis in Jannah. And that's why it has been made mention, there will be some people that will see Allah every month, once a month. Some people will see Allah once a week. Some people will see Allah once a day. Some people will see Allah twice a day. Based upon the way a person used the eye. In Surah Alif Lam Mim Sajda, Allah says, تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا ومما رزقناهم ينفقون فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين. Ajib, the connection. First of all, Allah makes mention of those people that establish tahajjud. Now, tahajjud requires a person to control his sleep. His eyes want to close, but he opens his eyes. His eyes want to close, but he opens his eyes. So the effort that he commits to is the effort of the eye. So at night when people are sleeping, he wants to sleep as well, he wakes up. So he controls his eyes. Commits it to the ibadat of Allah. So the reward will be in proportion to that. In the same style. Allah says, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. Because a person kept his eyes open, when he had the inclination to close them, Allah will grant him the coolness of the eyes on the Day of Judgment. And indeed the coolness of the eyes will be looking at Jannah, finding himself in paradise, and looking at Allah Rabbul Izzat. So my noble brothers and sisters, this topic that we have started a few weeks ago, and we're trying to cover different aspects of this topic and trying to strike a vein in our brain that will switch on and never turn off and will allow us to remain on the right path. Allah Rabbul Izzat give us the ability to communicate in the best way. And Allah Rabbul Izzat give each one of us the ability to thank Allah Rabbul Izzat verbally and physically for all the different parts that He has given us. Inna sam'a wal basara wal fu'ad kullu ulaika kana anhu mas'ula. The eyes, the ears, the heart, all will be questioned. What they used to listen to, what they used to look at, and what used to pass the heart. Allah Rabbul Izzat give us a life of taqwa, a life of purity, and Allah Rabbul Izzat allow us to beautify every single body part with a'mal that represent taqwa and piety. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. قال الله تعالى في الفرقان الحميد إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما. My noble brothers, sisters and elders, beautification of the body depends upon how much we commit to good deeds. Every body part will glow on the Day of Judgment based upon how the body was used. وَكُلُّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ. Allah makes mention that every body part will be adorned on the Day of Judgment if the body was used in a'mal salihah. How many handsome men and how many beautiful and pretty women will attract the ghadab of Allah on the Day of Judgment And those beautiful bodies that trapped so many, those beautiful bodies that trapped so many, will be thrown into the fire of hell. And how many people who are not blessed with beauty, one look was enough, those people will be honored, and with the escort of many malaika will make it into Jannah. This in itself indicates that the beautification of the body, of the human, of the insan on the Day of Judgment is based upon a'mal. Nowadays, when women want to project their eyes to be large in size, they place kajul in the eyes. And how many dollars and how much wealth is spent to beautify a human being, may it be a man, may it be a female. But this beautification is very temporary, that does not last for too long. The Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has left guidelines for us, complete instructions for us, that if we follow those guidelines and those instructions, we can adorn ourselves permanently. Our face will glow, our body will glow, and on the Day of Judgment we will be a beacon of light. In that environment there will be no sun. But for this we need to make a slight adjustment in life. And nothing is given to a human being without an effort. May it be deen, may it be dunya. And the effort for deen is permanent, and the effort of dunya is very temporary. The reward of the effort of dunya is very temporary. Allah Rabbul Izzah says in the glorious Quran, Inna as-sam'a wal basara wal fu'ad kullu ulaika kana anhu mas'ula. Indeed, the ears, the eyes and the heart will be questioned on the Day of Judgment. What did you look at? What did you listen to? And what did you place in that heart? And these are three body parts that Allah Rabbul Izzat has mentioned explicitly. And as you know, for the last few weeks we have been focusing upon the eye. And the eye has been mentioned in this verse as well. Further to make us understand the significance and the importance of the eye, Allah says, يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. Allah knows the fraud of the eye, the deception of the eye. And Allah knows what lies in the heart. Nowadays we are placed in a society, in an environment, in a world where sin has become a norm, and virtue and good deeds have become an exception. In the time of the Prophet of Allah, sin was an exception and good deeds was a norm. So a person that used to commit haram in those days was immediately pointed out. He could be recognized from far away. And that's why the munafiqun in those days used to establish their prayer. Not willingly, but they had to establish their prayer because it was a norm. But the times have changed, and there's no doubt that the times have changed. To practice has become harder. The effort required is much more challenging. But Allah, who is adil, who is just, will reward us in accordance. Nowadays, the evil of the eye is so rampant in the society, amongst the men in particular, that we do not consider it to be even wrong. That we look and we look and we look and we don't even give it a second thought. And if we're sitting in a car, this is observation, and we find one person looking at something that is haram for him, and we know that he's looking at haram, we will not even admonish him, because most probably we're doing exactly the same. Most probably we're doing exactly the same. And when a sin becomes a norm, then it is hard for the people in general to make tawbah, because they lose the hurmat of it. They lose the hurmat of it. If one person backbites nowadays, it has become a norm. He will not be admonished as if a person was committing zina. If one person was committing zina, everyone will stand up and say, what are you doing? This is haram. And if one person, na'udhu billah, God forbid, does an act of indecency in the masjid, most probably he will be killed. But if that same person is making ghibah, that is a major sin, most probably we will become a part of it. So the significance of that haram has faded away, because it has become a norm. And bad nazari, the incorrect usage of the eye, has become a norm. And this is one of the great traps of the devil. One of the great traps of the devil. He works upon a person for 50 or 60 years, and he throws him into darkness, and he makes him commit haram. And suddenly this person wakes up one early morning and realizes that the life that he is living is not right. So he weeps and he cries and he makes tawbah, and all the past sins are wiped away. Now there's a challenge for the devil, that this person shows obedience for one moment, and all his past sins are wiped away. So he introduces another tactic. He attacks from a different angle, that he makes people commit haram, but he makes the people lose the importance of that haram. And that's why bid'ah is so bad. Innovation. That people commit bid'ah believing it is right, it is virtuous, meritorious. So they will never make tawbah. Likewise, nazar bad, the evil eye, the looking incorrectly, has become a norm. And a person does not make tawbah from it. And as we made mention last week, one of the impacts of using the eye incorrectly is that a person does not enjoy the ecstasy of ibadat. He is deprived of the enjoyment of ibadat. People in the past, they used to stand all night in prayer. We cannot even comprehend that nowadays. But the reason behind it is that they filled their heart and their vessel with iman, and they kept away from that which was unlawful, and Allah blessed them with the enjoyment of ibadat. Their hearts were content with what Allah had given them. That's why the scholars say the greatest alim, scholars say, Ibn Jawzi, Allama Ibn Qayyim, they say the greatest alim is not that person that knows the rulings of salah and the rulings of zakat and the fine details of the Quran and the fine details of the sayings of the Prophet of Allah. But the greatest alim is that person that understands the punishment of haram, who knows what lies behind this unlawful act. And the more he perfects that, the greater he becomes in alim, as an alim. And everyone can become an alim in that respect. That we should understand that whenever I am looking at something that is not right for me, what is the punishment that lies behind this? Who am I pleasing and who am I displeasing? Imam Ghazali rahimahullah, Allah fill his qabr with nur. Very wise person. He says something amazing that really touched my heart. And I'd like to share it with my audience. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah says that when a person finds himself pushed by his desire to look at a female, if he looks, he's very foolish. If he looks, he's very, very foolish. So the audience asked Imam Ghazali, why is he foolish? He said there are two dimensions to this. The first dimension is that he looks and he finds the female to be to his expectation. He thought that the female would be very, very pretty, very, very beautiful. And he looks and he finds the female to be beautiful or better than that. Now to look is foolish because there will be a burning desire inside. He can't touch her. He can't fulfill his desires with her because it's haram. So now this burning desire will make him restless. A foolish option. Shouldn't have looked. How many a times we do look and then that thought remains in our mind for many, many days. And that picture, that thought emerges on and off. That does not allow us to enjoy our ibadat. And we cannot fulfill our lust because we know it is haram and we consider that to be a haram. On the other hand, the other dimension is we look and the female is not so beautiful. And we look and say, why did we look? Why did we look? Be ladhat guna. A sin that has no pleasure. So the best option, Imam Ghazali says, is for a few seconds until that female passes by, a person control himself, think about his creator. Now what will happen is that after that female has passed away, there will be satisfaction in the heart that I did not look. There will be satisfaction in the heart that I did not look. Allah ka hukm pura kiya, I fulfill the order of Allah. And secondly, Allah Rabbul Izzat will grant him taqwiyat in iman, strength in iman. And the third ni'mat is Allah will give him the enjoyment of ibadat. Enjoyment of ibadat. Last week I made mention that the Prophet of Allah said that bad nazri, looking incorrectly, is one poisonous arrow. And Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah further speaks upon this, and he says it's such an arrow that when the person releases the arrow, before it hits the target, it has poisoned the person that is releasing. Before it hits the target, forget about it hits the target or not. This is such a poisonous arrow that it poisons and injects its venom in the person that is releasing. Usko lage ya na lage, tumhe zarur lagega. Usko lage ya na lage, tumhe zarur lagega. In early days, what they used to do is they used to place the weapons, especially the sword, the dagger, the arrow, into poison one night before using it. So the arrow used to soak in all the poison. And the mere scar of that arrow used to be destructive. It used to kill the person. And that's why the Prophet of Allah made mention of bad nazari to be an arrow, a poisonous arrow. That even the first deliberate look that has no lust compelling it, no lust to support it, has started injecting its venom in you. And slowly and gradually, the ill intent will support that gaze. It starts normal. It starts without any ill intent. But it doesn't take much for the good intent to be replaced by bad intent, by ill intent. It doesn't take much. And without knowing, a person has drifted away, so far away from his origin of good deeds. That's why Allah says you will be questioned about the eye on the day of judgment. The Prophet of Allah says, ما تركت بعدي فتنة أضر على الرجال من النساء. ما تركت بعدي فتنة أضر على الرجال من النساء. After my leaving, there's not a greater trial upon a human being, upon a man, than a promiscuous woman, an evil female. Noble women have great ranks in the hereafter. Women that adorn themselves with good deeds, cover themselves when they leave the home, do not attract the gaze of the opposite gender. They are very, very noble. And alhamdulillah, our women are like that in the eyes of Allah. But the Prophet of Allah is saying that those promiscuous women, those women that leave the home with the intention to attract, they beautify themselves with the intention that I will attract, that people will speak about my beauty. The Prophet of Allah says this is the greatest trial upon a man, to safeguard himself from this trap. Those men and women that protect themselves in this time are the walis of the time. How many a times we open that computer, highway of information, we turn it on, maqsad is work, and how many a times pictures pass by that leave a very disturbing image in our mind. And our intention is not that. It is very hard to safeguard the eye, and it is very hard to keep the mind pure. Because without even thinking, the images pass by. And we may be strong, we may be aware of our responsibilities, but it doesn't take much for a person to slip. And that's why they say, do not place yourself in an environment where you may be trapped. Now it is very hard because life without a computer nowadays has become impossible. Especially for our youngsters who are studying. But if those pictures are left in the mind and are causing disturbance in our deen, then we have to analyze and value, where do I stand with my Creator? Is it a must that I use this tool and this instrument, or should I give it up for my deen? Hazrat Luqman, the very wise person, he gave nasiha to his child. And the same has been made mention about Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam to his child. Exactly the same advice, with a few changes. And Hazrat Luqman and Hazrat Sulaiman both say to their children that if you have the intention to pursue a lion and a python, go for it. But if it comes to your mind that you are going to pursue a female, abstain from it. So the children asked, Father, why? Hazrat Luqman and Hazrat Sulaiman said that when you pursue a lion and a python, if they turn around and attack you, the worst possibility is that you will lose your life. The worst. You may overcome it, you may escape it, but the worst is you will lose your life. But if the woman turns around and responds positively to your ill intent, you will not lose your life, you will lose your iman. You will lose your iman. One turning around, one smile, approval, one glance, one soft approach, gone. आदमी तो पानी पानी हो जाता वैसे ही. He will lose his iman. And that's why Hazrat Yahya bin Zakaria, the only prophet that did not marry in his complete life. All other prophets will marry or have married. And I say this complete life because Jesus has not fulfilled his complete life. According to riwayat, he will return, marry, he will be blessed with 2 children, Musa and Muhammad. The only prophet that did not marry, as a Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam. And he says that zina emerges from the eye. Zina emerges from the eye. And as Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he used to say that when a person looks deliberately at a female with lust and desire, he has committed zina with the eyes and he has committed zina with the heart. He has committed zina with the eyes and he has committed zina with the heart. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma says that the shaitan only has 60 or 70 years to work upon a human being. So he works upon the very weak points of a human being. He hasn't got time to waste upon a human being. He has to capture, trap the human being and take him away from his Lord. That is his maqsad. So he sits at 3 stations. Abdullah ibn Abbas says the shaitan sits at 3 stations. One is the eye, one is the heart, and the third is the private part. The eye, the heart, the private part. And if you think about it, and if you analyze it, we take information through the eye, we place it in the heart, and we allow the heart to control the private part, top to bottom. We take it through the eyes, we allow that image to sit in the heart, and then we allow the heart to control the private part. So if a person controls from the top, the bottom will remain pure. But if the person does not control the top, if he's looking at pornography, and he says it's only looking at pornography, and I'm just enjoying it temporarily, hasha wa kalla, it's not going to happen. It's very, very rare that this person will not commit haram. And I'm talking about the physical haram. This is a haram in itself. And think about it, my dear brothers. When we look at something that is indecent, what goes through our wife? If she finds that we are looking at females with lust and desire, what passes through her mind? What does she consider herself to be at that moment? God forbid if our women start to look at pornography. If our women start to look at pornography and they're caught out by us, what will we think? Ajib. We want to look and we want our women to be Rabia, Basriya, Adawiyya. Pornography is a disease. I've spoken to many, many people, doctors. They say it is an addiction. Just like heroin. You take that first sniff, if you can call it a sniff, I don't know how to take it in, but you may take the first sniff, just out of enjoyment. It never stops. It never stops. And without even realizing, you have become addictive to that drug. This is a drug introduced by the shaitan. Pornography. You look at it once, oh, let's look at it just once. You may control yourself for a substantial time, but it will return back and it will drop you to your knees. And you will look at it again. You will look at it again. That's how it works. This is how this environment, this society is still alive. Because we are approving of the indecency. We are a part of that indecency. Not approving, we are a part of that indecency. Let's ask ourselves, how many magazines have we bought? How many a times we have been on forbidden sites to look at something that is haram? How many a times we have locked the door and looked at something that is haram? يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ. Allah knows the fraud of the heart. Allah knows the fraud of the eye. Allah knows the fraud of the eye. And we cannot excel, my noble brothers and sisters, in deen if we don't take Allah seriously. Don't take our deen seriously. We have to take Allah seriously. We have to take our deen seriously. There is no way out for us. Thodi der ki mushaqqat, thodi der ki mehnat, a few moments of endeavor, a few moments of struggle, effort for permanent enjoyment. All our dreams, all our desires will be fulfilled if we can control ourselves a little in this world. So all those brothers and sisters that are looking at pictures that are haram, looking at people that they should not look at, please make tawbah. For your own sake, for your own betterment. Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and I will conclude on this topic today, on this story, that Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wasalam once had a meeting with shaitan. And Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wasalam said that, "Oh shaitan, how do you trap people? How do you lure people in? What do you do? How do you work upon a human being?" He said, "I'm not going to tell you. I tell you, you reveal it to everyone." He said, "Please, tell me." He said, "I'll tell you 3 formulas that I use often." He said, "Number 1, when a person makes the intention to give charity, when a person makes the intention to give charity, I make him postpone the fulfillment of that intention. Say, do it tomorrow. Not today, tomorrow. Somebody knocks on the door and he says, look, we need some funds for the masjid, for an Islamic project. The thought comes in the mind, let's give. He says, all right, we'll give it tomorrow. He has won over you. He has won over you, the shaitan. Making us say that we will give it tomorrow and do not respond immediately, he has won the battle. Now there's a great possibility that tomorrow will never come, and a person will forget, and that environment in which tawfiq descended will not return, and a person will not have the ability to give. We'll speak about tawfiq in the weeks to come. Second, when a person makes a ahad, alam ahad ilaykum ya bani alla ta'budu shaytan. We made a ahad with Allah, a covenant, a promise with Allah, that we will not worship the shaitan. And worshipping shaitan is not bowing in front of him. Worshipping shaitan means not to obey him in every faculty of life. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. Hazrat Adi bin Hatim, the son of Hatim Tai, he said, he was a Nasrani, and he said to the Prophet of Allah, we never worship the rabbis and our religious leaders. We never worship them. And the Prophet said, the definition, the ta'arif of worshipping is that when they said this is halal, you used to accept it. When they used to say this is haram, you used to accept it. This is worshipping. Following the shaitan, worshipping the shaitan means to obey him. So in one dimension, looking at something that is haram is the worship of the shaitan. So when we make a ahad with Allah, a promise with Allah, that, oh Allah, we will fulfill your command, we go through it. We pull it off. Now the shaitan says, what I do is, that the person make the promise. Somebody knocked on the door, he said, Hazrat, masjid aajo. Come to the masjid. Haven't seen you for so many days. Brother, let's start praying together. And he makes a promise in his mind with his Creator that I will fulfill my promise with you, I'll start praying. But he does not allow it to formulate immediately. He makes the person procrastinate, delay. And that delay is very strong, that this person never gets the tawfiq again. So whenever we make a promise with Allah, like we're going to make a promise today inshallah, at the end, that nazar humne hifazat karni, and we start from the time we step out of the mosque. And it is easy. It's not hard. You know, one person, he said to his mentor that I can't control my eyes. He said, all right. And he didn't say nothing to him at that time. And after a few moments he said, can you take this hot milk to my family and be mindful that it doesn't drop, and bring a hot bowl from my home back. Prior to this, he used to be looking at everything. Now he was focusing upon the milk. He didn't want the milk to drip, to fall. So he's looking at the milk, and without even realizing, he went and he came back without looking at anyone on the left and the right. Engage your mind with something else. Engage your mind with something else. If the mind is empty, then you're going to look left and right. Engage the mind. One of the best things is dhikr. Make dhikr always. Have a tasbih in the hand. Or turn on a lecture. Turn on the qiraat. So the mind is occupied. Once the mind is occupied, even if your eyes are looking at the road, most probably the images will not make it into your mind. Occupy the mind. If you have a tasbih in your hand, just a tasbih in your hand, just the mere tasbih in your hand will make you make dhikr. You can't just have a tasbih there and flinging it like this. If you have a tasbih in your hand, you're going to go, subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. Occupies the mind. And that subhanallah has to have some impact upon us. One subhanallah is greater than this world and what it contains. Even if our mind is not engaged with the tongue, it has to have some impact. And the third trap of the shaitan is whenever men and women come together. I am the third day. It is very, very hard for a man to escape the trap of a female, and for a female to escape the trap of a male if they are alone. So don't place yourself in such an environment. And that is the computer. That is the computer. If you are alone, you are with a female alone. Think about it. You're with a female alone. So those people that have this problem of pornography, don't allow themselves to be alone. If the wife is stepping out of the house and no one's going to be in the house, say, I'm going with you. Or tell the child to remain back. Have to make some effort. Have to try to control ourselves. We should not place ourselves in an environment where haram becomes a norm, becomes easy. So if you have to work on the computer but you know that your hand is going to slip and touch a button that you shouldn't be touching, tell somebody to be with you. Go into your children's room and do work. So you can't do the haram. Try to create an environment where haram becomes impossible. Now we have been speaking about the eye for so many days, we are over time. There's no maqsad of sharing information if we don't make intention. We have understood the importance of the eye. Now we make an intention together today. And we give strength to the intention. And cover the intention with strength by saying inshallah. Inshallah, when a person says inshallah, then the madad, the nusrat, the assistance of Allah takes care. So inshallah, from today we will control the eyes. And my noble sisters that are listening downstairs, share this information. We do exactly the same. We control our eyes. And we do not become a reason for our brothers to slip. My noble sisters, Allah reward you for all your efforts. You do not become a reason for the brothers to slip. Adorn yourself, beautify yourself, cover yourself in such a way that the men do not look at you. And if still the men are looking at you, alhamdulillah, you have done your part. Allah Rabbul Izzat give each one of us tawfiq to implement what was said for the last few weeks. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.